Masechta Menochos, that Pei Zayin, Amar Aleph, is starting from 6 lines in the top, starting from the Gemara. Ein Maviyin loy masug v'loy mavush v'loy me'oshan. We don't bring sweet wine or cooked wine or smoked wine for the carbon mincha im heavy puzzle. And if he did bring such wine, it's going to be puzzle. In fact, but in the beginning of the Mishnah we learned we don't bring Heliyaistain, which is sweet wine because of its sweetness. Maybe kosher, and if he did bring it, it's going to be kosher. And in the Sefer we learn by sweet wine, if he brings it, it's possible. Ravina said, combine the two statements and teach them as one, according to Rashi, that they're both going to be lechumra. It's going to be v'im heavy, that if he brings it, it's going to be possible. According to Tesis, we combine them, we say it's going to be kosher. And Tesis gives us a reason because there was a hefsek with Meushim with the old wine. Ravashi says, Chulya d'shim shaloi mayis. The Gemara says that the chulya, meaning the sweetness that comes because of the sun, that's not disgusting, because the grape is officially a good grape, and it only became sweetened because of the sun. But chulya the peidamayis. But if the grape itself is sweet, that's disgusting, and therefore it cannot be. If he brings it, it's going to be possible. That's the difference between the two wines, between the Reish and the Sefer. So the Mishnah also stated that we don't bring old wine. And these are the words of Rabbi. The Chacham say it's kosher. My time the Rabbi. What's the reason of Rabbi for saying that you don't bring old wine? Says Gemara, because I'm a kral like Yayin, because the pasuk says, and the nesachim, which is a quarter of a hin, for a lamb wine. So that's what it says, a lamb. Ma keves ben shlasei. So this teaches us, just like the carbon that you're bringing, the lamb that you're bringing is in its first year. So too, the wine has to be in its first year. So the Gemara fact it's Gemara yes. If it's so that Rabbi learns it from the carbon that's being brought, so it's just like the carbon. If it's a 2-year-old lamb is puzzle, afyayim ben shtei shanim puzzle. So too the wine, if it's of 2 years, if it's 2-year-old wine, it should be puzzle because you're comparing it to the carbon. That's how it is, Taka. But Tanya, we learned in Raisa, Yaim ben shtei shanim lo yavi bim heavy kosher. It says one shouldn't Taka bring a 2-year-old wine, but if he did bring it, it's kosher. So it cannot be learned out from the lamb. Man shamat leid amalayavi. Now, who did you hear from that one shouldn't bring old wine? Rabbi. It's Rabbi. And Rabbi says befesh, it may be kosher. And Rabbi says befesh, and if you do bring it, it's gonna be kosher. So Rabbi couldn't have learned it out that that old wine from the lamb, that it has to be within the first year, because if so, it should be possible if it's 2 years old, and Rabbi holds it's kosher. This is the reason of Rabbi. It's written, do not look upon wine when it's red. Now in the first year, it's taka red, but after a while, the color fades, the red fades. So we learned in the Mishnah, we don't bring wine from vines that are off the ground, are suspended on trellises or eisner bars or wood to keep it standing. But the only one that you do take from is from the vines that are on the floor, and it was a cultivated, and it was a worked out vineyard. Tana says, the cultivated vineyards, meaning that was dug out twice a year. So says the Gemara, Rav Yosef, Havale Kana de Padeisa, Rav Yosef had a corner plot in the vineyard. The Rav Beit Tvei Pirka, he dug an extra digging by the vines, And because of that, and his land produced such strong quality wine that normally, in order to dilute it, you would need 3 parts of water and 1 part of wine. Now you'll need 6 parts of water in order to dilute it, in order to dilute the wine, because the wine was so strong. Okay. We learned in the Mishnah, they wouldn't place the wine in large casks, but rather they would put it in small barrels. We learned in the Mishnah, in a Braisa, Chaviyos, Kadiyos, Ludiyos, Ubeinanis. Chaviyos are small barrels, are the equivalent of Kadiyos, medium size, Kadiyos, Ludiyos, medium size Ludian jugs. We do not place them 2 by 2, only 1 by 1. And the way they did it was they didn't let it touch it. They didn't put it one on top of the other or one next to each other, because if one would rot and have a bad smell, the bad smell, if it was touching, would go into the good barrel. Meaning, so when you put it side by side, it should not be touching. Okay, let's go weiter. Keitzad Beidik says, how does one examine or check out the wine if it's good or not? If it's good or not. The Gabbai goes with the reed in his hand. The Gabbai goes, sits there with a stick or reed in his hand. Hagir hikish bakana. Then the barrel, when it gave off this foam or foamy from the sediments, so then right when it happened, he tapped the person who's in charge of the faucet to stop, to close it. Tana, because that was not good wine. Tana zarek hagir shel shmarim. When the barrel gave off this bubbly from the sediments, which was not good, the gizba hikish bekana, the gabbai would tap the person who's in charge of the spigot to shut it off. Why did he have to hit him? Why didn't he just tell him the words? After the Gemara says it's a right to Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said, just like the speech is beneficial for the spices, it's the hevel, the ear that comes out of the person, so too the hevel of a person is bad for the wine, or the vibrations is not good for the wine. By speaking. Okay, the vibration from the words, that could also be, or it's the hevel or the ear of his mouth. Rabbi Yehuda says, but what did Rabbi Yehuda say? That wine that contains mold is the kmachim is possible. But Rabbi Yehuda, if a person made hagdish the moldy wine for nesachim, ma'o sheyilka alav mishum b'amum. What is the halach b'negeya for being mekadosh carbon, which is amum? Should he get malchus? Given the puzzle, do we say that since the wine is puzzle wine, it's similar to an animal that is a balmum, a carbon that's a balmum, and therefore he should get malchus? Or perhaps the balmum only is applicable to behemoth. And it says, you want to take who? This is the 4th time we had this similar question. And this is a sefer that says each time has a reason why he said it all these 4 times. So you want to, I don't remember where it was. The rams for the carbones that that they took from Mayav, that's where the best ones were, from Mayav. Kvasim, Mechavre. The rams were from Mayav, and the lambs were from Chavre. Rams are animals in the second year. The lambs, Rashi says, are the animals in the first year. Agolim, the calves were from Sharon, Mishorai, and Geisol is Mahar Melech. And the birds came from Har HaMelech. That was the best birds, and the doves, the pigeons. That's where they took it for the offerings of the birds. We should bring lambs whose height is like the width. And Rashi says that means that the backs were wide. Taisus brings down that they were also very high. If you look in the Taisus Shagayim Rechabim, it says that the Kvas Shal Tamid Hayikol Kakivayim that they were so tall that they were able to eat off of cedar trees, which are very tall. Anyway, Rabbi said, Rabbi Shila, in my time, Rabbi Yehuda, what's the reason of Rabbi Yehuda? Zag Yemara Chsiv Yida Miknach Bayim Bar Kar Nicha. For it's written, your livestock will gaze on that day. And then he says Kar Nicha. Kar Nicha means a broad lamp. So we see that the word Kar means a lamb, and Nicha means wide, and that's the pasuk for it. So the Gemara concludes with another halacha or teaching of Rabbi Bar Rav Shila. It's written, upon your walls of Yerushalayim, I put up guardians. All day, all night, they're continuously reminding me. They're never silent. They're continuously reminding me that there should be the Geulah. On behalf of the Eden, you who remind Hashem, meaning, but not, be not silent. Okay, so there it's referring to the Geulah. My Amri, what do those guardians say? This is what Rabbi Shila said. The guardians say, you will arise and show Tzion Rachmanis. They daven to Hashem for the Bnei Yisrael's Geulah. They petition all day, all night for the redemption for the Yidden. Yishalayim Hashem. They say the builder of Yishalayim is Hashem, which is written now in the present, and it also hints at the Geulah at any time. But initially, before the Churban, what would they say? For Hashem has chosen Tzion, He has desired it for His place of living, for His dwelling, which teaches that the Eibishter chose Tzion in this world, and He wants it for a permanent dwelling place for Him in the world to come. We shall return to you. Perek kol kabanes tzibor. Zog the Mishnah shtei midas shel yavish. We're starting a new perek. We're starting the perek of shtei midas. Zog the Mishnah, the Eilik Mishnah shtei midas shel yavish hoy b'mikdash. There were two types of measuring cups for dry substance, dry things in the base of Mikdash. Isare, a chatzi isare, a cup that measured the isare, and 1.5 isare. There were actually 3 types of cups: one isare, another isare, and a chatzi isare. Zak the Mishnah, isare mahayim shamish. What was the isare used for? That keli shabay hayim made the l'cholam menachis. That Isan would be used to measure for all the Menachos. And they would not measure neither 3, they didn't have like a measuring cup for 3 Yisraelis, for a bull, for a carbon that was used for a bull. even though you had to bring 3 Yisainis, but it was one at a, they filled up one at a time, and not a keli of 3. Nor did they do have a kli of 2 Yisainis in for a ram, for coming that they brought for a ram. Rather, again, they measured 1 Isan at a time. Rather, he would measure the flour for these Menachos in pieces of Esrenes, in increments of Esrenes measures. Chatzi Yisrael Mahayim Mishamash. What did they use? The half of Yisrael. Made the Chavite Kohen Gadol. That one would measure the flour for the Chavite of the Kohen Gadol. That was half was brought in the morning. Half of the flour was brought in the morning, and half in the afternoon. So if you want to tell me, we learned in the Braisa. Rabbi Meir would say, what does the Torah teach us with the words Isan Isarein, which double Isarein? What does he come to tell us? It comes to teach us there were 2 types of Isarein measures in the Beis Hamikdash. One measure was overflowing; it was heaped over the cup, and that's how they got to Isarein. And then another one was flat on the top; it wasn't overflowing, flat on the top. That made it to Isarein. With the smaller heaped Isarein cup, overflowing cup, one would measure the flour for all the Menachos, for all the cup Menachos. Machuk Shabbai Hayamaydeid Lahavita Kohen Gadol, and with the larger, the flat one, they would measure the flour for the chavitim of the Kohen Gadol that he brought half in the morning, half at night. There was only one keli that was Isarin. Like it says, and one Isarin for the one lamb. So what do we do with the pasuk where it says a double lashon Isarin? L'rab is chatzi Isarin. It comes to include the half Isarin measure. So for Ameya who uses this pasuk to learn that 2 separate Israelis measures cups were there. One was flat and one was overflowing. The cup measured the sun by overflowing it, by having it heaped. Chatzi Isarin b'nalei. From where does he learn out that there was a half Isarin? Nafkalei meve Isarin. He learns it out from the vav of ve Isarin. Rabbanan, who don't use this pasuk to learn out they measure for a half Isarin. What did they do with the vav? Vav loy dashi. They don't dash the vav. Rab Meir was Rab Meir who says that you do, and there were 2 types of Isaris measures. What does he do with the pasuk where it says Isan Echad? There was one Isan for the one lamb, from which the Tanaim learn out that there was only one type. That pasuk was that you shouldn't measure more than Isarin. That even though you had to bring 3 Israelis for a par and 2 Israelis for ayil, the way it was done in increments of 1 Isarin at a time. There was no catered for 3 and no catered for 2. So as for the Rabbanan who used the pasuk Isarin Echad for a different drasha, so where do they know that you don't have a keli for 3 Israelis and 2? Nafkalahu minikudei. They learn it out that you cannot use a keli of 2 Israelis or a keli of 3 Israelis for kabanes from the dot that shows on the word Isarein. The Tanya that we learned in the Braisa Rabbi Yosi. Lama nakud vav shebe'emtzisan. Why in the Torah is a dot placed over the letter vav in the middle of the word Isarein by the vav, is ayin sin reish, the vav, over the vav there's a dot. So Isarein marish shal yom tov shachag, of the first Isarein mentioned in connection to Sukkot. Shelo yimdei, this teaches us that one should not measure loy b'shal shlish lepav, loy b'shal shleim layil. That one shouldn't use like a measuring cup of 3 Isareinis for a bull, for a carbon that's brought for a shir, a par, nor should he use a cup of 2 cents which had to be brought for a ram. Rather, he would bring it in increments, a son at a time. So whatever Rab Meir, who learns out from a different pasuk, what does he do with the dot? He doesn't dash the dot. We brought down in the Mishnah Chatzi son Mahaya Meshamish. What function did the half his son serve as? That one would measure the flour for the Kohen Gadol's chavitim for the half of Menochos. In fact, he did. One measured the half his son of flour from the chavitim, from the lechatchila. He had a measure. The measure was done. A measure when he brought the lechatchila half his son with that measuring cup of half his son. What I mean, I'll ask you a contradiction. Chavite Kohen Gadol. It says the Chavite Kohen Gadol, the Talmid of the Shachs and Shalbein Habayim, that were brought as halves, they didn't lechatchila come in halves. Although maybe his son Shalom Echitzeyu. The way it was done, he first brought it fully sudden, and then it was divided into 2 halves. Rav Sheshes answered, "My Maida Nami de Kitani." What too is the kavana of the expression? One measures that the Mishnah said. Mechalik means he divides. Our Mishnah means that the Kohen Gadol, after bringing a complete yisarin, he would take the cup and put it into the cup of a half yisarin, using the chatzi yisarin cup for the morning. From the full yisarin, he would pour out a half into the cup that had a chatzi yisarin for the morning, and then the other half went for the ben habayim. The half Yisrael measuring cup, according to Ameya, was it measured by overflowing it, by being heaped, or the whole cup inside filled had a full Chatzi Yisrael? So you want a siman Chatzi Chavit Shulchan, a siman half the chavitin of the table. So what does he want to say with this siman? So the word half refers to the shaila regarding the half Yisrael measure. Chavitin and the table are to 2 other shailas that Rambam Chacham will ask. But you should ask this question in reference to Rabbanon's opinion as well. They too acknowledge that a half Yisrael measure cup was used. So why don't you ask according to Rabbanon? So Rabbanon Yisrael Gufri coming by Yalei. According to Rabbanon, the Yisrael itself was a shaila, because according to Rabbanon there was only 1 keli. So that 1 keli could be either Gadish or Machuk. Gadish meaning it was measured by being overflowed with a heap over it, or it was the keli inside filled up a fully Yisrael. According to Rameh, it's not a shaila because he said beferish that 1 is Gadish, 1 is Machber. According to Rabbanon, it was 1 keli. So according to Rabbanon, we can even ask on that keli of the Yisrael, was it Gadish or Machber? Amalei, he said to Rameh that from 1 detail of Rameh, or from 1 case of Rameh, we can learn out and deduce for the other case of Rameh. And from the Rameh's opinion, we can learn out the halacha according to Rabbanan. From this, that Rameh says that his measure for the chavitin flour was a machuk, meaning the whole keli fit in the holy son. Chatzi son nami machuk. Then you can learn out his opinion that the half son was also inside the kli, not all together with the overflowing. Rameh machuk, and from Rameh's opinion that he says the son was a leveled one, went fully inside. Rabbanan nami machuk. According to Rabbanan, we could learn as well that the sudden measure was a leveled one. Regarding the chavitin of the Kohen Gadol, with what did he divide the dough that it should be equal? B'yad or b'kli? Could he divide the dough by hand, or he has to divide it with a measuring keli? In fact, and for the Gemara Pshita, surely it was done by hand. Because if it was divided with a utensil, with a scale, to Tani Yachis, should he bring a scale into the Azara of the Beis Hamikdash, into the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash? So Machama answers, "V'yachnis, what's the problem? Let him bring it in. What is wrong with that?" So Rav Chisda explains, "No, given the Kilalaksiv, since the scale is written in connection with a curse, Lav Oirechara, is therefore it's not right or proper to bring a scale into the Beis Hamikdash." He brings down from Chumash Vayikra a whole bunch of punishments for being over the will of Hashem, and it says "V'heishiv," the Torah states "V'heishiv achmachum b'mishko," and they will bring back your bread by weight. The loaves will crumble in the oven, facing them to use a scale to divide the remaining crumbs. So it's part of the curse there. So that's why it's not proper to bring it into the Azara, into the Chatzah of the Beis Hamikdash. By Rabbi Macham Rav Chisda. By Bnei Rabbi Macham Rav Chisda. Rabbi Macham is the Shai from Rav Chisda. Shulchan, regarding the Shulchan, the table. Barsha Yikadish K'matzim Mekadish Shalei. What is the halacha ben Ageya being Mekadish, the koimetz measure of the levana, of the spices that were on the airspace of the Mizbeach, that was lying on the Mizbeach? Mir de Mekadish Lachem, do we say, since the Shulchan makes the bread, Kodesh, K'matzim not Mekadish, I should say also the Kmitza of the levana, of the spices, also become Kodesh, also become holy. Or perhaps we say, only that which is fit for the table, like lachma panim was for the bread, that becomes kaddish. But something that was not fit for the table, like the levena, that cannot become kaddish. Amalei, edim kaddish. So he said to Rabbi Machar, Rav Chisda answered, no, the table cannot make the kaimetz measure of levena kaddish. Is this so? Rabbi Yechlan. Rabbi Yechlan said, according to the one that says that the Kohen Gadol would bend the two sides of the Lach Mapanim 2.5 Tfachim upward, so why would it be 2.5 Tfachim that it was folded over? Because the Shulchan is an Amma wide. According to the one that says an Amma is 5 Tfachim, and the bread was the width of the bread was 10 Tfachim, so you had 5 Tfachim extra. What would they do? They would take the bread, and 5 Tfachim of the bread sat flat on the Shulchan because that's the Amma, and then you had 2.5. You had 5 extra Tfachim because the bread was 10 Tfachim. So the 5 extra you would fold over on both sides equally 2.5 Tfachim to make up for the other 5. And since it's 6 breads, 2.5 Tfachim higher because you folded it over, so you had 6 times 2.5. So that would be 6 times 2.5 would be 15 Tvachim above in airspace. According to the Mandi that says Amma is 6 Tvachim, so the bread sat at 6 Tvachim, but the width of the bread was 10 Tvachim, so you had to fold up 2 Tvachim on both sides. So then you would do Nimsa Shulchan Mekadosh 12 Tefach L'mayla. You do 6 times 2 because each bread was folded over 2 Tfachim high, and you had 6, so it went 12 Tfachim high. So you see that the Shulchan was Mekadosh items that have been placed upon it, even up in the airspace, 12 Tfachim high. So for sure it should be Mekadosh the Levina. Amalei ain't a Mekadosh l'kadev. The table cannot make a Kaddish in order that it should be acceptable for a Kabbah on the Mizbeach. I'm not kosher l'pasel, but it's kosher that if a Tvul Yom touched it or you take it out of the Beis Hamikdash, that it should become disqualified.